Welcome back for episode 3 of Disturbing Reddit Posts. Be sure to check out the playlist to see the other episodes if you haven't already. Let's investigate. If you enjoy internet mysteries and generally disturbing content, feel free to subscribe and turn on notifications for more content like this. I also have a Patreon and a PayPal, so if you're interested in supporting the channel, feel free to check those out through the links in the description. Or you can leave me a tip by clicking the thanks under this video. Thanks to anyone who considers this. This video will contain discussions of topics that some might find triggering. Viewer discretion is advised. You can become a Ko-fi member or a member here on YouTube to watch an uncut version of this video, which features a whole extra entry that was unsuitable for this cut. If you live in England like me, or anywhere else with a similar climate, I'm guessing you'll also be absolutely sick of the rain at this point. It literally hasn't stopped for a week, as if I needed another excuse to not leave the house. One thing that makes going out in this weather a little more bearable is these Vessi cloudburst shoes. They're not just water resistant, but 100% waterproof. They're made from a super soft knit material called Dymatex that keeps your feet warm in the winter yet cool in the warmer months, and the rubber sole gives you extra grip in wet conditions. Until recently, you would never catch me going out without my Doc Martens, but now I often find myself opting for these Vessi shoes instead, as it's so much more convenient to just slip them on and off, and I was surprised at how much more comfortable they are. I travel a lot, and these shoes are so lightweight, they're perfect for going away, whether you wear them on the journey or pop them in your suitcase. There are a variety of styles to choose from as well as the Cloudburst range, and they're all vegan, so there's a shoe for everyone. I honestly love these shoes, and I think you will too, so head over to vessi.com/internetinvestigator and use the code internetinvestigator for 15% off your entire order. Thanks to Vessi for sponsoring this video. The boom of at-home genetic test kits from companies like 23andMe and Ancestry DNA has resulted in mixed consequences. Many have had positive experiences. They've learnt about their heritage and connected with family members they never knew existed. However, it's also led to some dark family secrets being uncovered that in some cases may have been better off a secret. A couple of years ago, a Reddit user shared their own horror story that resulted from a 23andMe test. Quote, "My parents were high school sweethearts. They started dating when they were both 16. They dated for 4 years, and then my mum, 59 female, got pregnant with my oldest sister, 39 female. Then my dad, 59 male, did the right thing. He dropped out of college. He was on the path to medical school. It was his dream to become a doctor. Married mum and started working at a desk job at my grandpa, 80 male's company. My parents later had 3 other kids, my older sisters, 35, 33, and me, 30. My childhood was pretty normal. Dad worked, mum stayed at home taking care of me and my sisters. Dad was always very present in our lives. I and my sisters were always daddy's girls. We were very attached to him. I was particularly close to him. We had a really deep bond. When I was 13, I was diagnosed with leukemia and he never left my side. He held my hand during chemo sessions during the whole time. He consoled me when I had my first heartbreak and assured me that everything would be alright. He taught me how to drive. He walked me down the aisle 3 years ago when I married my husband and told me that was one of the happiest days of his life. I was always his favourite as well. My parents were happy. I never saw them fighting or anything like that. My dad took my mum on date nights at least twice a week. He spoiled her a lot and they seemed really in love. My parents were the perfect couple. Everyone saw them as something flawless, an example of true love. My mum was my dad's only one, and dad was my mum's only one. It was something that he was very proud of, that it was really special for him. I felt really bad when I lost my virginity to my ex-boyfriend and realised that I could never have the same thing as my parents. My dad's mum died during birth, and grandpa raised him as a single parent. He never remarried or dated anyone after her death as far as I know. Grandpa refused to talk about Grandma. It was very painful for him. He never met anyone from my grandma's side of the family, and Grandpa didn't talk much about her. In June, I bought a 23andMe kit for me and Dad. I thought it would be cool to see if he had any relatives on Grandma's side, and we did the test together. We did the test. I found out that I had 2 half-brothers and that we shared the same father. We were honestly confused. I and Dad didn't understand that. We thought that this was a mistake. When we told Mum about this, she froze, started crying. We pressured her a bit more, and that's when she confessed about her 11-year affair with one of my dad's friends. He was our neighbour at a certain point of our lives, and he was in the same class as Dad and Mum. I remember seeing him around when I was a kid. He was a close friend of the family. Dad was in denial. He thought that it was a mistake. I and my sisters ended up doing the test at a hospital. 3 days later, the results arrived. No one matched with my dad. He was not our father. For the first time in 30 years of my life, I saw my dad cry. Not a normal cry, sobbing like a kid. We tried to talk to him. He got up, grabbed his keys and left. We tried to call like 100 times and he didn't answer. My mum was having a panic attack, so my oldest sister took her to the hospital. We didn't hear from Dad for 3 whole days. We searched for him everywhere. Stories like this aren't that uncommon, and it's not surprising when you consider the statistics of affairs in marriages. The estimated percentage of people who have cheated on their husband or wife varies greatly from study to study, anywhere from 20% to 60%. It's also thought that 2 to 3% of all children are the product of infidelity, which is honestly mind-blowing. In many cases, infidelity is never discovered. People often don't admit to it, so the popularity of such easy and convenient genetic testing has led to many revelations similar to OP's story, where people found out their partner cheated and that their children aren't biologically theirs. Whether a marriage survives an affair or not, it's probably one of the hardest things to deal with that a person can experience, but this story in particular ends in the most tragic way you can imagine. Quote, "Eventually, my grandpa found him at the family fishing cabin. He had himself. He didn't leave any notes or anything like that. In 9 days, I discovered that my mum had an 11-year affair, that my dad wasn't my biological father, and that he took his own life. It broke me. His funeral was another mess. My dad's side of the family got into a fight with my mum's side of the family. My grandpa and uncles ended up kicking my mum out of the funeral. It was a disaster. The first time I saw my grandpa crying as well. It was something I wish I hadn't seen. He entered a really deep depression after that. He barely speaks anymore. After the funeral, neither I or my sisters could look at mum anymore. We just couldn't. I can't look my sisters in the eye as well, and I blame myself every day for suggesting that stupid test. Thanksgiving this year was the first time we didn't celebrate it as a family in 33 years. I can't look at my mother anymore. She spends her days staring at a wall. Her side of the family is pressuring me and my sisters to re-establish contact, but I just can't. My sisters are also not speaking to her since the funeral. I found out that I am pregnant last week. I and my husband have been trying for the last 2 years, and I'm not even happy. I feel hopeless. I feel broken. Sometimes I start to think about Dad, and my heart looks like it's going to explode. I miss him so much. Has anyone been in a similar situation? How do I survive this guilt? How the hell do I move past this? Any advice is really appreciated. This is just such an awful situation all round, and it's crazy to think that one decision out of curiosity to do the DNA test literally ruined OP's life. She lost her father and her mother too. I really don't know how OP would ever be able to forgive her for what she did. It would be hard enough if she cheated once, but she had an 11-year affair with her husband's friend and allowed him to raise 3 children that weren't his without his knowledge. Had OP not done the test, there's every chance her dad would have found out eventually anyway, but she's bound to blame herself to some extent for what happened, even though it absolutely wasn't her fault. It's even sadder hearing her last ever memory of her dad. In the midst of such a shocking and devastating revelation, the last time she ever saw him, he just got up and left. Those 3 days that he was missing must have been agonising, and for her granddad to have found his son's dead body makes it all so much worse. OP posted this with a throwaway account, and after leaving a few comments on the post, she never provided any updates on the story. I can't see how she would ever move past this nightmare, but I sincerely hope that she and her family found a way to cope. Around a year ago, there was a post on the Reddit Bureau of Investigation titled, "Is my friend lacing my drinks?" It read, "A few weeks ago I met up with an old friend to grab a couple of drinks. We had a couple of beers and a few shots, and after some time I noticed that he seemed kind of off. He was moving weirdly and his eyes were almost closed, but other than that he didn't seem like he was getting too drunk or anything. I actually asked him if he had taken anything and his reaction was, 'Why do people always think I'm taking drugs?' No, I definitely didn't." I decided to believe him, but later on, even the bartender said that he was clearly on something. I was getting tired, and the bartender's comment kinda sketched me out, so I decided to leave. I was perfectly fine at that point. I could walk straight and talk properly, and rode my bike home without any problems. I went to bed and everything seemed fine. However, the next morning, I wake up and I'm beyond dead. My heart was pounding, I was nauseous, had diarrhea, and worst of all, I had to throw up all day. Now the thing is, I don't get hangovers like that. I'm the annoying kind of person who feels perfectly fine the next day. At most, I'll have a bit of a headache. I have never in my entire life thrown up the next morning, after except for when I got roofied 10 years ago. I brushed it off and thought I was probably just getting old, but yesterday I met up with the same friend at his place and the same thing happened. I was fine, he was completely out of it eventually, and I biked home, got a big glass of water and slept just fine. Today I am absolutely dead again, exact same symptoms as last time. Is there anything he could be putting in my drink that would cause this, or is this simply an unlucky coincidence? Edit. Thanks for all the responses. It's been over 24 hours and I'm still sick AF, and on top of that I started feeling super dizzy this morning. I will try and reply to you all when I feel a little better. Right now, looking at my phone is making me nauseous. Let's hope it's just 15 hangoverless years that are finally catching up to me. OP provided a couple more details in the comments. She was 31 years old, there were around 3 months between each incident, and she and her friend were together for 4 to 5 hours each time. The only way OP could know for sure that she was spiked is if she got a drug test, which I'm guessing she didn't do as she never updated the post, so we can only theorise based on the details she revealed. She said she was roofied 10 years ago. I wonder if she felt similar to how she did when she was with her friend these times, apart from throwing up. I don't know exactly what effect each and every drug that could be put in a drink would have, but I would imagine if OP was spiked that she would have felt it that night, not just the next morning. It's also worth remembering that she didn't mention her friend trying anything with her on either night. Generally speaking, there's one main reason why someone would spike someone else, so in this case, there doesn't appear to be a clear motive if nothing ended up happening. She also said that he was completely out of it himself the second time, so if any drugs were involved, he was clearly taking them himself. It's not impossible that he was spiking her for another reason, perhaps just because he thought it would be funny, or because he didn't want to take whatever it was alone, but she was totally fine when she left, and by the sound of it, he didn't try to stop her, so while it does seem like quite a coincidence that both times she met him she felt so ill the next day, I don't think there's enough reason to believe that he spiked her. So what else could have happened? If she went to the same bar both times, I'd suggest that it may have been a problem with the drinks they were serving. A few years ago, I used to go to one specific pub quite frequently, and while I don't usually get hangovers, I always felt like death the next morning after drinking there. I don't have any proof, but I always wondered if they were serving dodgy alcohol because of that, and perhaps it could have been the same situation for OP, but the second time she was at her friend's house. It's certainly odd that it seems the only common denominator both nights was her friend, who she suspected had taken drugs himself. Her symptoms could be consistent with food poisoning, but she said in the comments that she ate different food on both days, so it would be unlikely that she was ill due to 2 different foods. It's also unlikely that the reason is she's just getting old, as she suggested, because she stated that she drank alcohol in between, on Christmas Day, New Year's Eve, her birthday, and a few other times, and she was fine the next day each of those times. There were a couple of other suggestions by users in the comments. One said that this sounds very similar to how their co-worker found out they had celiac disease, and another suggested OP take a COVID test in case they were asymptomatic but it caused her body to react to the alcohol differently. Both these theories would seem unlikely considering OP drank alcohol numerous times between those 2 nights and felt totally fine. It's possible that if OP drank a different type of alcohol to what she normally drinks on both these nights, that could explain it, as people can react differently to different alcohol. Drinking 10 units with beer can have a very different effect to the same number of units with wine, but she didn't say that was the case and implied she did nothing differently to what she normally does when she drinks, apart from hanging out with this specific friend. This is probably unlikely, but given that the limited information we have rules out most other theories, I wonder if her state of mind caused her symptoms, kind of similar to the placebo effect. Particularly when it comes to alcohol, I think your state of mind can play a big role in how it affects you. For example, for me there's been times where I've been pre-drinking with a group of friends, we've been laughing and having a great time, and I started to feel tipsy after 1 or 2 drinks. Contrastingly, there's been other times where the vibes weren't so great, and no matter how much I drank, I felt pretty much sober. Although I rarely get hangovers, there has been a time or two when I've been drinking and talking about how I rarely feel bad the next morning, then lo and behold, the next day I have a hangover from the depths of hell. It sounds like OP was a bit on edge after suspecting that her friend had taken drugs, and especially so after the bartender's comments sketched her out. So maybe she was so worried that she had been spiked that she ended up experiencing false symptoms. That's the best explanation I can think of anyway. Either way, I don't think an unusual coincidence is enough evidence to accuse the friend of any wrongdoing, but especially considering OP said that she can't shake the feeling that something is wrong, perhaps the wise decision would be to not hang out with him, or at least not drink with him, until she figures out what happened. Even if he did nothing wrong, there is still that doubt there in her mind, and she probably won't feel totally safe around him if she's wondering whether or not he spiked her. The fact that she's even wondering this about him in the first place could suggest that she doesn't totally trust him. I can't blame her for questioning it, but if he was a very good friend, she'd likely need more evidence before thinking that was a possibility, so maybe this is a sign that the friendship isn't worth it anyway. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts in the comments, plus any suggestions you might have for a future episode of Disturbing Reddit Posts. If you enjoyed the video, please consider liking and subscribing. Huge thank you to my Ko-fi members and channel members whose names are on screen now. I really appreciate your support. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next Thursday in a new video.